I think, Mehdi, you've summed up, I think, a lot of the factors here. Some of it is definitely mental health issues. I think there really is more mental health in a lot of these. I mean, we had a man who flew an airplane into an IRS building after writing a political screed, and yet he wasn't called a terrorist or politically motivated. He was called mentally ill. There are many examples of people doing these things in the United States, and they're always classified as mentally ill people. And yet, when Muslims do insane things, and many of these things are actually quite insane, they're categorized as terrorists. So I think we have a double standard, but undeniably there's certain people that it's been a kind of romanticized version of this idea of the caliphate and the restoration of the caliphate after its fall in 1922 or 24, depending on which time limit you're going to look at in Ottoman Turkey history. But the fact is that the group ISIS emerged as a response to a lot of the Shia atrocities of militia against Sunni villagers. And you have two factors here. One of them is a takfiri ideology, this idea of anathematizing Muslims, of considering Muslims to be outside of the faith. That's one issue. Then you have this provincialism, this attitude towards Christians and Jews and Yazidis and other peoples that Muslims historically have lived in peace with and protected and preserved their churches, their synagogues. This is one of the first times in Muslim history where these atrocities have been committed against religious minorities. So the idea that this has something to do with normative Islam is not acceptable. But as you know, we're living at a time when Islam is whatever anybody who wants to says it is. This is the kind of nominalist attitude that a lot of modern people have. I don't think we can say completely that it has nothing to do with Islam. Obviously, these people are motivated by scripture, which is clear in their publications and things like that. But again, it's a type of Protestantism, and I'm not talking about modern Protestantism. I'm talking about when the Protestants revolted against Catholic tradition. This created the religious wars of the 17th and 18th centuries. You have a lot of people opening the Quran, finding verses in there that can be decontextualized or completely misunderstood, just like you can in the Bible. And these are, unfortunately, these are the realities of the age that we're living in. You have to have scholars that are really deeply rooted in the Islamic tradition. We're not living in the pre-modern times. We're living in a completely different period, and it's not reforming or changing Islam. It's actually taking the tools of the religious tradition and revitalizing them. So in that way, it's renewal, which our Prophet talked about, renovation, what's called tajdeed in the Arabic language. So we need renovation, which is not to destroy the house and rebuild a new house, but to restore the dereliction of the house, to restore it so that it's functioning, that you turn on the faucets and water comes out. You flush the toilet. There's a lot of toilets need to be flushed.
I want to
Well, Mehdi, part of the problem is that there are so many egregious wrongs in the Muslim world. And I know people don't like to hear this card, the grievance card. But the reality of it is, if you go online, you can watch the types of videos where atrocities are committed against Muslims on an almost daily basis, and nobody speaks up against it. There's a lot of young people that really feel incredibly frustrated, and if we don't find healthy means by which they can express some type of outrage in a way that's productive, conducive to civil society, to actually redress some of the wrongs that are out there. If they don't find ways to do that, there are people, demagogues and others out there that will manipulate the emotions of youth. People are frustrated.
You talk about frustration.
Malcolm X in 1964 said the Muslims are suffering from a major public relations problem. He said that in the autobiography. And I would say, look, all those things are true, but remember, 1 out of every 4 people on this planet, Mehdi, is a Muslim. We represent 1.6 billion people and rising. You cannot take these statistically insignificant numbers out there and extrapolate from that somehow Islam is an evil religion. The Ku Klux Klan at one point had over 5 million members. The Ku Klux Klan was a Christian terrorist organization in the United States that terrorized African Americans. So people have to put things in perspective, and I really think that people fail to put these things into perspective, my friend.
Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, thanks for joining me on Upfront.